It's a combination art and science. And so, there is a process to follow. There is a best in class way of doing, of securing the renewal, for example. That said, we don't need to take the soul and the person out of it, especially in the customer success world.
Once again, welcome to the Digital Customer Experience Podcast with me, Alex Turkovich. So glad you could join us here today and every week as we explore how digital can help enhance the customer and employee experience. My goal is to share what my guests and I have learned over the years so that you can get the insights that you need to evolve your own digital programs. If you'd like more info, need to get in touch, or sign up for the weekly companion newsletter that has additional articles and resources in it, go to digitalcustomersuccess.com. For now, let's get started. Hello, welcome back to the Digital CX Podcast, the show where we talk about all things digital in CX. My name is Alex Turkovich, and you're listening to episode 101 of the show. I have an awesome guest lined up for you today in Stephanie Blair, who is the founder of Know and Flourish and is a fantastic CS executive leadership coach. As the name would denote, or as the title would denote, we do talk a lot about career-related things, and really how to supercharge your career growth. So it was a great conversation around that. But we also get into, of course, artificial intelligence and CS and utilizing those things, kind of the digital evolution of customer success, and even what it's like breaking into CS from other areas of the business. So I think you'll super enjoy that conversation. Before we get into that, though, I do have a couple of housekeeping items for you. First off, if you're listening to this kind of quote unquote live in February, later this month, I think it's the 24th and 25th of February 2026, I'll be co-chairing the CS Summit in Austin, Texas. It's the event put on by the Customer Success Collective around the country, and later in February is the Austin event. I'm co-chairing it with Keishla Caesar-Jones. If you're in the Austin area, or you feel like coming to Austin for an awesome CS event, I would highly encourage you to go check that out now. It's going to be 2 days of a bunch of really smart people talking about a bunch of really great things in CS. So I've seen the speaker list. You can go check it out on the website as well, which is linked down in the description. But there's some really great topics there, so I highly encourage you guys to check that out. Second item for our housekeeping is the Digital CX Masterclass. This is a course I have been working on for quite a while. Those of you who heard me talk about it kind of late last year are probably like, hey, when's this thing coming? And the answer to that is relatively soon. I've been working feverishly on the content. This is going to be basically a 6 to 8 week masterclass / boot camp meant for established digital CX leaders, or those who want to get into digital CX, and really is aimed to give you kind of a jump start on everything that I've learned over the past couple of decades, kind of condensed into eight weeks. So it's meant to fast track you into a mature and well-educated digital CX leader. In that masterclass, we get through, of course, what is digital CX and those kinds of things, the foundational elements of it, but also, what do your typical org charts look like for digital CX? What kind of technology is involved? How to integrate artificial intelligence into the whole thing, how to look for vendors, how to write an RFP, how to structure the program, how to communicate to your executive leadership team about the program. It's really meant to be kind of an end-to-end build your digital CX motion. And at the end of that 6 to 8 weeks, hopefully you'll walk away with basically a full plan for what you want to do in your own business. So highly encourage you guys to check that out. I do have a wait list that's live on the website if you want the latest on when it launches, and maybe you can be part of the first cohort of students. That wait list is going to be at digitalcustomersuccess.com/masterclass. You can check that out there. So without further delay, here's my conversation with Stephanie Blair. I hope you enjoy it, because I sure did. Hi, Stephanie.
Hi, Alex.
We're saying hi a lot because we just said hi, and now we're saying hi again on the podcast. But that's how it goes. A little behind the scenes. Welcome to the show. I'm really happy to have you. And we started talking about this like a hot minute ago. So glad we're finally doing it.
Same here. Good to be here.
We obviously have quite a few mutuals, and we have one mutual in particular that's kind of key to this story. But do you want to talk a little bit about what you do and who you are, and especially Know and Flourish? I want to know a little bit more about that.
Founder and CEO of Know and Flourish. It's a professional growth advisory. So be it through coaching, training, or advisory services, we help companies at critical growth inflections and the leaders that run them. My background started in hybrid sales roles back in the day of digital transformation and advertising. But then I quickly found my footing for nearly a decade in customer success lanes, both as an individual contributor and as a VP of customer success, ultimately at a firm called eMarketer, where I ran about 2/3 of the accounts and the team that supported them. So a lot to bring to the table. CS is my favorite part of the sales go-to-market funnel. Yes.
The equation.
Often overlooked, right?
Totally. Yeah. And, it's dumb because that's where all your renewals happen. So
yeah, we'll get into that, I'm sure.
I'm sure we will.
But I do, I only coach leaders who are responsible for growth. So that could be a founder, but that oftentimes is someone responsible for that go-to-market engine. And increasingly, I am working with CCOs or VPs of customer success, which, as we know, mean different things at different companies, which we'll get into.
Yeah.
But I'm eager to dive in, especially to bring a career-oriented approach to this conversation.
Totally. Yeah. One of the things that I think this show has evolved into a little bit over the years is really getting out of the strategic and a little bit more in the tactical, and also like really very much focused on the individual contributor as much as the leader. So that's why I think our conversation is going to be cool, because it's a big part of what you focus on is not just like how to do this stuff, but the career building aspect of it, which is super cool.
For sure.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about how we know each other?
Well, we share a mutual connection, as you discussed, and actually two.
A couple.
Because one of your former guests happens to be connected in my family circle, but our more immediate connection is my husband, Matt Carinanti.
Yeah.
That's my married name.
Who I've affectionately called Carante for the last 30 years of my life.
and that reason is why I kept Blair as my professional name, because nobody can spell Carinante.
No.
Or say it.
Yeah. So your husband and I went to college together, to music school together. It's fun times, good times, and
smart musicians. You keep your passion, but you found another path.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. We had kind of a backup plan, but we didn't know what that backup plan was until the backup plan was needed.
Let's talk about the power of relationships, though. How far back is that, right? We don't want to date you, but it's been a couple decades.
Yeah. It's been more than a couple of decades, let's put it that way. But it's just so cool to have those kind of connections come in, and I think that kind of speaks to the customer success community too, just because I think it takes a certain kind of person to operate successfully in customer success, and those people tend to find each other, which is cool.
Yeah, there's a real power of relationships. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, there definitely is. Well, look, I know obviously this is the digital CX show. We talk a lot about digital strategies and automation and, of course, artificial intelligence. And I don't know that we're going to spend much time on that specifically today, just because I think, A, it's been well explored, but B, I think with you on the show, it's a really good opportunity to spend some time talking about people carving a niche out for themselves within an organization and enabling, their own growth, and having, good conversations with their leadership team, and also for leaders, how you take some of the strategies we talk about on the show and use them for your own kind of career growth and career pathing and things like that. And from our conversation, it's very obvious that you're super passionate about those kinds of things.
For sure. And I think partly it was what I lived through. I joined a company at a critical growth moment in account management, and we were sitting back, receiving Fortune 500 companies contracts for seats for a SaaS research product. And there was another gal on the team and we thought, hey, we could be doing so much more with these companies. How can we bring a hunter or proactive, expansive lens to this company at this moment? And we really defined the enterprise path. And so, each step of the way, I was pitching new roles as the business grew, just really trying to meet the moment they were in. And I think a lot of people are surprised that you can grow a career that way.
You can do that.
Right company, right time, sure. But, I always tell people, think about your impact and match the moment that you're in and take things on beyond the scope on paper, right? Mm-hmm. Experimentation is key too.
Well, there's a mindset element of it, because I think there's a lot of people who kind of operate under the mindset of, well, this is what they're paying me for. This is the job description. Okay. That's one way to do it,
Well, in this competitive landscape, I would advise you to think expansively beyond that and have some fun. I mean, listen, there is a point of burnout, especially among women or those in these sorts of CS seats where you're good at what you do, you take on more and more, and then ultimately you have too much on your plate and nothing really to speak of in terms of direct correlation or results. And so we're not suggesting that,
no.
But to strategically bolt on a new way of doing things, pilot something that can then be scaled to the rest of your group. These are all great opportunities to think as a leader if you're in an IC seat without being mandated to do that.
This is kind of where the digital thing intersects a little bit, because there's this really amazing proliferation of tools and technology that enable kind of anybody to do amazing things with technology almost without operations permission or whatever. Like, you can just go build stuff, which is cool. A case in point is one of the CSMs on my team, had been using this kind of spreadsheet renewal calculator situation. And she took that and, vibe coded a web app for it. And,
how amazing.
It's such a cool thing because it didn't take a lot of time to do. It wasn't like a massive distraction from her day job. It's a tool that, provides massive value. But then, to your point, like it also kind of allowed her to put her name on it. And I think that's the kind of stuff that we're talking about. Like, you do your gig, but then you keep your eyes open for those opportunities where you can do something about a problem, whether it be a custom GPT or a vibe coded app or some kind of thing that doesn't need a whole lot of resources and maybe isn't even dependent on data security and all that kind of stuff that we always run into, but things that you can just pick up and do.
Yeah, that's certainly a mindset thing, and good on her for just seeing an opportunity, seizing it, and but it speaks to your leadership, it speaks to your culture, right? And I think more companies need to find ways to allow experimentation safely and encourage that, because the great ideas can come from many different pockets of the business.
In our kind of initial conversation, we talked kind of at length about what it's like to, or what's involved in creating those kinds of identities for yourself. And I think that's something that you spend a lot of time coaching your clients on, and whether it be leaders or ICs. I think it's similar concepts. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Certainly. Well, it starts with self-awareness, and again, moving beyond that job description. But I always encourage people to say, ask themselves, what do you do better than 99% of other people? Because a job is a job and anybody could slot in and do it. But what's that extra something that you're bringing to the table? Even if it's the soft stuff, the curiosity, the willingness to try and fail and try again. It's a combination of not just what you can do technically, strategically, but how you do it, and really owning that as part of your identity. I think people in, corporate roles or with certain titles sometimes neglect to recognize that they can bring some of their unique self to that party.
I agree. Have you ever read this book called Orbiting a Giant Hairball? Do you know about this book? We talked about it, didn't
we
we?
talked
Yeah.
about it. It's sitting right here.
Did you read it? Yeah.
Don't
It's
quiz
such
me
a good,
on it, but
no,
yeah,
I won't quiz you
it's
on it.
fun.
It's one of those things that I bring up with quite a few people when this kind of topic comes up, because it's basically, I suppose you could call it a memoir, but it's about this person who worked in Hallmark corporate and created a name for himself just by, doing things that needed to be done and creating an identity around that. And I think, so much of what gets lost in the shuffle when you're in the 9 to 5 grind, in the W2 grind, is that sense of self. You kind of maybe conform to the culture, or you conform to like the standard way of doing things. And I think I think that's kind of a dangerous place to be, because you get complacent and you get kind of cozy, and it doesn't leave a lot of room for your own personality, your own interests to come into play. Because I think if you're really working on your career and climbing the career ladder, I think a big part of what a lot of people overlook is interjecting their own interests and passions into the whole thing. I'm sure you've had a lot of direct experience with that, but do you agree that that's often overlooked?
Yeah, I wear two hats on this topic because I'm a big believer in, sales, customer success. It's a combination art and science. And so, there is a process to follow. There is a best in class way of doing, of securing the renewal, for example.
Yeah.
That said, we don't need to take the soul and the person out of it, especially in the customer success world. I remember coaching this fantastic leader. She was a mid-market CS leader who really was shining in her one company. That company got acquired. She looked for a new opportunity. And after about a year in that new seat, she just said, I got to get out of CS. I hate it. It's soul crushing. And we did an assessment that I tend to use. That's a strength-based assessment. And creativity was one of her top 2 out of 9 attributes. And we identified it's not that you don't want to be in CS, it's that your culture is so rigid. It is so oriented towards process and operational flow, which, there's a place for, but it just, they lost out on her talent because there was no room for personality, experimentation, or her own, instinct, really. It was just sort of robotic. So, from a C-suite perspective, you want, order and you want to know that the bar is being met, but at the same time, people are people, and we don't want to stifle those great ideas.
Yeah, because you're just going to create a revolving door, that way. Like if in essence, I mean, it takes a certain kind of person to have longevity in those kinds of situations where it's just kind of stifling and rinse and repeat
More of the
over
same.
and over again. Yeah, exactly. I think us as human nature don't necessarily gravitate towards that. That said, I'm sure there's people listening to this show right now that are like, yeah, I just want the same thing every day and just go home. And
sure, everybody's wired differently, but even then there's an opportunity to, inform product or, to make the handoff between your org and the new business side of things smoother, right? There's always a chance to expand and stretch what you do. And bring your expertise a little to the left, a little to the right of your lane. And that's actually how, I coach a lot of people who want to evolve their work. Maybe in their CS org, it is more about service and less about expansion, but they want to get, they want to build their skills out and evolve in that direction. Well, how do you do that? A new company might not necessarily take a risk on you if you have zero experience there. So how do you expand your lane in a sense to take on some of those responsibilities, even if it's not, directly in your job spec.
Totally. Well, and that's where CS is actually really well positioned for career growth in essence, because I think some folks are under the impression that it's like, well, you're a CSM or you're manager of CSMs or maybe operations, but in reality, you have so many connections into sales, into product, into operations, into, wherever it may be that, fostering that kind of collaboration, cross-functional collaboration, doesn't just help the renewal, doesn't just help CS flourish, but it helps you from a career perspective to maybe explore things. If you want to become a product manager, I'm sure there's shadowing opportunities, available in your CS gig to go do that.
Yeah, or you can, be the person who facilitates that introduction for the product team rather, and just be that glue. So I think there's a huge amount of opportunity both within your current company, but then also, to expand what CS can mean at other firms. I'm actually curious about what you're seeing as the trend now. Like you said, there's the CSM traditional track, but to me, CS, the broader bucket, can come in so many different shapes and sizes. So, what are you observing from the design standpoint of the function?
That's a great question. I think there's a big proliferation of people who are much more focused on the operations side and digital element of customer success, and incorporating technology into that human flow.
Finding the hybrid.
There are, I belong to a couple of communities that are very digital focused, and the number of roles I'm seeing kind of posted in those communities, specifically focused on AI, automations, digital program management. The digital program manager has been a role that has just exploded in the last 4, 5, 6 years.
So
maybe
exciting.
Not 6. Super exciting. The thing that's evolved on the leadership perspective the most, in my opinion, is the thought process behind digital. Because even a few years ago, digital meant, okay, we have some junior CSMs who are our digital CSMs, and they manage the smallest accounts, kind of like a BDR notion. And I think that has already shifted a bit to this model where you have these program managers who are managing essentially the digital customer experience product, so to speak. So it's kind of like, this product management type situation where, they're analyzing that experience, building automations around it, installing artificial intelligence, large language models to help facilitate the customer experience, and really almost managing that digital relationship, while at the same time, and really almost 50-50, building the digital infrastructure that helps the humans have more human conversations, which I think is the coolest thing ever. Because, it used to be, and in a lot of organizations still is, where your customer success managers are ripping their hair out because between all the meetings, they don't have time to prep for the meetings and create the decks and get all the data together. And we've all been there, right? So I think a huge feather in the cap of a really mature digital organization is that they're pouring as much resources into preparing their humans for value add conversations as they are into the actual, customer digital motion.
So interesting. I love this moment. And I think, with this proliferation of tools, humans need to be at the center. It was like when programmatic first came out, you can't just automate everything. You're always going to need that human component. And, I saw something yesterday on LinkedIn. It was like the prediction for 2026. And they said, one of the top roles that you can anticipate is head of in real life, and it's just like whatever that means to your organization, but finding that intersection between digital enablement and the human experience, I think, is my way of thinking.
I'm so happy that the conversation is starting to shift away from AI is going to take my job. Because, unless you're like a data analyst crunching numbers all day, it might. But if you are a customer success manager owning renewals, and maintaining a human to human relationship, you're not going anywhere. If anything, your job's hopefully getting easier, and hopefully your leadership team is aligned around easier doesn't necessarily mean you can cover more accounts, right?
It's an evolution.
It's an evolution. And I think that we're starting to also see this kind of saturation point of artificial intelligence because everything has AI now, and people are kind of getting a little weary and over it to where maybe we've rotated a little bit, and we can, come back to earth a little bit and say, yeah, these are great tools. Let's use them and carry on.
Yeah, bit of a reset. Hit the reset button a bit, which evolves us into, I think, a topic I wanted to bring up, which is when people are trying to rethink their careers. I know that was a topic that we discussed. I think there's a misconception that if you're going to pivot, let's say out of marketing and into CS, that you totally have to restart. Or even if you're at, one sort of CS motion and you want to expand and go elsewhere and it looks a little different or more multifaceted, let's say, we don't have to throw out what we've done before, but it is, the candidate is responsible for creating that narrative and helping the business understand what is transferable, and what is the potential impact that they can have. So I work with a lot of people who are like, I don't know if I can, carry the sales bag anymore. And, those people over there, they seem like they're having a lot of fun on the CS side, but they don't quite know how to make the leap. And I'm here to say, like, the water's just fine, but you have to help people understand how to think about you because you don't fit squarely in a box. And as we know in this like recruiter-led world, that's what they want to see. So you really have to be bold and, control that narrative.
I mean, it's so saturated, especially in CS, the market is so saturated with amazing talent, that it can be, to your point, I don't think it's impossible. And in fact, your strengths sometimes are the things that you learn outside of customer success management. I think that, there's a lot to be said for a really tenured CSM who knows how to foster a relationship and those kinds of things, right? But I think it just depends on what your goals are. Like if your goals are hardcore product adoption and, you really want to drive usage of your product and things like that, you may want to pull a marketer in to help, kind of have that marketing-y feel to your communications and whatnot. If your goal is hardcore, expansion and upsell motions as part of renewals and those kinds of things, somebody with a strong sales background knows how to have those conversations. There's a different formula for every business, obviously. I think it depends on what your goals are.
Yeah, I love that. And just as a candidate, being clear on extracting what those goals are, right? Because a lot of times the paper version of the spec doesn't fully capture the moment of the business and the impact that you can have. So you've got a two-way interview street, obviously.
Oh, totally. And, the thing I've learned, I think, over the last couple of decades is like the interview. Okay, great. Let's check some boxes. Let's make sure kind of you're a human and you can,
it's a fit
but I think where it's obvious you have a really good hiring manager is the person who can kind of tease out what that experience is going to look like when that person is in seat without like adding layers and layers and time to the interview process. Like, those really effective, practical kind of interviews that give you an insight into what a customer will experience with that person. Have you kind of seen some cool practical or interview type things that have in your mind been really effective?
Yeah. I mean, there's two ends of this spectrum. There's still the traditional 30, 60, 90 day, process and how would you think? But I think increasingly they're taking a true customer problem or a true business problem and wanting to understand how people think, especially at the leadership level. More at the IC level, there are definitely some interesting tools to see how they, show up on camera, think, articulate themselves as a part of the process, because at the end of the day, a CSM is one of those first, it's like the face of the company. And so we want to make sure the company's well represented and that there's diversity and all these good things. So I still think most interview processes are broken, or have room for improvement, let's say, maybe in a kinder fashion. But, we're trending, especially if some real dialogue can happen. I'm always encouraging people, if I'm coaching them on interview strategy, to ask the follow-up question. It's like, well, why are you asking so much about churn? What's really going on here? And extract more detail than what you would get in a typical volley back and forth question, answer. And psychologically, it also makes it, I think a little more enjoyable for the person interviewing. We've all been in interviewing seats where our schedule slammed, dozens of meetings a week, and now you've got to interview for 5 open heads, and it's hard. And so the more you can make it, alleviate the burden from the interviewer, I think the more success you'll have, and you'll stand out from the crowd.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think for me, one of the most effective tools in the interview process has always been the peer panel interview. Because if you're structuring it well and you're, giving specific panelists like an angle and whatnot, I think what you get out of those are like really good, candid conversations where also the team feels bought in on the decision, and and you get to see what that person is kind of going to be like with the team,
right? And I think especially for CX roles, like you're going to have multiple stakeholders. You need to understand who's in each seat. What do they want to understand? What are their unique pain points? I think you have to, though, as a business prep, or as the CRO or whoever is in charge of the org, you need to make sure people know what role they are playing on that panel. And also, please, let's bring back the thank you note. I can't tell you how many.
Oh my God.
You were in a customer, you're interviewing for a customer facing role, and there's no it shouldn't even be 24-hour follow-up. There should be something thoughtful, drawing from the actual conversation. I don't know where we lost this, but please, 2026, let's bring it back.
No matter how deeper I get into the digital realm, whether it's customer success, whether it's interviewing, whether it's just being a human, the deeper I get into it, the closer I get to the handwritten note. It's a bizarre thing, and I love it because, there is something like really tangible and meaningful about somebody taking the time. And sure, an email is fine too, but like there's something tangible about somebody taking 5 minutes, especially in today's world, about just writing a thank you note or writing something, that it means something.
Yeah. And you don't even have to have good handwriting. My friends joke that I'm the person who gives them a card for every occasion, but I have horrible handwriting. So
please
chicken scratch. Take your time with it, but it's more of the sentiment of it.
It's the intent. Like I don't remember what you wrote, but I remember that you wrote me. One of the things that I always want to ask my guests, though, kind of as I round out conversations, is first and foremost, I would love to know what's in your content diet and what kind of things are you paying attention to keep yourself abreast of the industry or leadership or whatever.
Sure. Well, first and foremost, I practice what I preach, and I really try to stay engaged with my network. So, depending on the month and how many, trips or, keynotes or engagements I'm working, the number might dial up or down, but I'm always trying to connect one-to-one coffee meetings, virtual Zoom meetings, and just, stay in touch with people who I admire, who have a different vantage point on the ecosystem than me. And I'm constantly, admiring them. There are a couple podcasts for those in seats such as this audience. It's a little broader, but I love the Revenue Leadership Podcast, which is, I'm sure you're familiar with the Kyle Norton. That's for really anyone in revenue, so not exclusive to CX, but really great stuff on there. I'm part of the Pavilion community. I've been a member now for several years, and I just find an immense amount of, insight and inspiration there. And increasingly, I'm thinking from a growth standpoint, I think a lot about what CEOs are thinking about, and C-suite podcasts, C-suite strategies with Stacey Sussman, a podcast, is another one in my rotation. we have to also have some fun, a little bit of true crime here and there.
Yeah,
Doesn't
totally.
hurt anybody. And definitely an avid reader. So if you're not familiar with Blinkist, it's a great way to get the short answer, the quick view on something before determining if it's worth your time.
I almost get FOMO with Blinkist. Like I was an avid blinker. Is that a thing?
Sure.
For a while. And then, I actually read a few of the books that I got that I went through on Blinkist, and I was like, man, it's great, but if I highly encourage like anyone who is actively using Blinkist, if something resonates with you, go actually read the book, because it's
for sure. There's just so much out there and new stuff coming all the time. So it's a great way to stay on
kick
top
the
of
tires.
things. Yeah. And then you see yourself wanting to highlight or something, go and support those authors for sure. Big library fan here too.
Yeah. Oh, totally. Yeah, absolutely. I love that you're paying attention to things that are kind of maybe outside of CS. Like what a lot of people bring to that list are like, CS podcasts and all that kind of stuff. And while that's amazing, I think, you need to be in touch with what the C-suite needs. You need to be in touch with, revenue and best practices there and how to really drive that kind of stuff. And I think that transcends, into whatever you're doing.
Sure. Cool. I mean, the C-suite stuff is what connects you to the business objectives, which is always going to make your case that much stronger. And then in terms of the rest of the GDM funnel, machine, it just helps you be a better peer and sort of bridge those gaps internally or at your next company.
Take your blinders off.
For sure. Yeah. So find your niche, but also, be open.
Yeah. So listen, where can people find you, engage with you? LinkedIn, obviously, but you've got good stuff going with Know and Flourish. So where can people engage?
Sure. I'm very active on LinkedIn. I also have a Substack called Grow and Flourish. So once or twice a month, I'm posting on practical career things, leadership tips, and growth strategies. I also have a fun Music Monday podcast post where I will, share something that will motivate your week. So if you're into music like Alex and I are, have a look.
Yeah, and Karante. It's awesome talking to you. Thank you for taking the time. I really appreciate it. And I'm so glad that, we connected the way that we did. Super cool.
Thank you, Alex. So good to be here.
Thank you for joining me for this episode of the Digital CX Podcast. If you like what we're doing, consider leaving us a review on your podcast platform of choice. If you're watching on YouTube, leave a comment down below. It really helps us to grow and provide value to a broader audience and get more information about the show and some of the other things that we're doing at digitalcustomersuccess.com. I'm Alex Turkovich. Thanks so much for listening. We'll talk to you next week.